Welcome back to another episode of Off Hours with Bourbon Lens with your host, Jake and Jake. And today we're excited to bring a little bit of Kentucky flair to you, even though he resides in Nashville, Tennessee. Kyle Tucker from The Athletic joins us today to talk about life, sports, and the chaos that twins bring. So Kyle, thanks for joining this episode of Off Hours with Bourbon Lens.
Yeah, man. Great to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
So Kyle, for people who don't know, just real quick, can you introduce yourself and what The Athletic is and what you do for them?
Yeah, so I've been covering Kentucky since 2011, and first for the Courier-Journal. I'd covered Virginia Tech before that. I'm from Clarksville, Tennessee, went to school at Western Kentucky, worked in Virginia for 8 years, and then wanted to get back closer to home, and the job opened at the Courier-Journal. Brett Dawson went to the rival site, and his job opened up, and I knew some people in Louisville who reached out and connected that way. And so it was a great opportunity to get back closer to home. Worked for 5 or 6 years, all runs together now, at the Courier-Journal, covering Kentucky football and basketball. Then went to a news site that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and its parent company started. It's just an online only company, as I thought that was sort of the future of sports journalism. It was called SEC Country. Had a lot of fun with that. Did that for 2 years, and then it just suddenly one day they called us all in and said we ran out of money, basically. So that was over. We covered every team in the SEC. It was a lot of fun, but and then was very, very fortunate that a few other places wanted to talk to me about covering Kentucky, and I ended up at The Athletic as they really started to expand. I had talked to them a year before when it was like a new thing, and there were like a dozen writers. And wasn't comfortable with it then, but it's blown up now. And, 500-600 people were international, cover soccer in Europe, and, global expansion. Basically got bought by the New York Times this year. So a lot of crazy things have happened, but it's been a lot of fun. And The Athletic is a different place than I've ever worked at all in the business. It doesn't focus necessarily on every little moving piece of minutia on beats, but tries to tell the really cool and deep and interesting, meaningful stories. And under the, it started under the premise that if you told stories nobody else was telling, that people would pay to read it. And I think people were pretty skeptical of that. And it has proven to be pretty wildly successful. 2 years ago, I think we passed 1 million subscribers, and I don't even know what the number is now. Well over that, I think. And then, as I said, the New York Times bought us, and we've kept rolling. So it's been a lot of fun.
No, that's exciting. I find The Athletic to be a great place to get content because I follow you, the stories that you tell. Like that's what we do as a podcast, as a holistic, is we want to tell the stories, not just ask the same general questions over and over again. Get to know the people behind the scenes, and craft that story. And that's kind of what we're going to do today, is craft the story with Kyle here. So through that creative process of being a good storyteller, because that's what you've really become, in addition to the sources and all the moving parts of beat that you cover for Kentucky basketball. What's it like, for you when pulling together stories? What are some of the elements you're looking for to communicate with folks?
I mean, one thing that I try to always keep in mind is these, especially at the college level, and with Kentucky basketball, it's for a long time, it's been largely freshmen. So 18-year-old college students is, even though they might've been a 5-star recruit, and even though the hype and the expectation is the same every year that they, go to the Final Four, compete for a national title, or it's a huge failure. And we've seen in the last 3 years how some of the fans react when they don't even really come close to that, is to remember and through stories, show people that these are human beings, and they have a story, that there's something about them that is much more than, whatever they can do on the court. And oftentimes it's like, it's maybe a little bit of a cliche thing to say now, but you hear it a lot of times after something crazy happens or bad happens, or something is revealed about someone that shocks everybody, people will say, you never know what somebody's going through. But that is very true. And I try to keep that in mind and try to understand that. And I don't like it to devolve into like tragedy porn, I think sometimes that happens. Like we just had the NFL draft, and like sometimes or the NBA draft, and that sometimes becomes that in a way that's kind of gross. It's like when this person's like biggest moment, let's make them revisit their saddest, thing or most horrible thing they've gone through. And I don't want it to become that. And you have to be careful of that. But sometimes there are stories that are, there are hard stories. There are great stories, happy stories, things that happen that are formidable in their young lives. And I just try to look for those things. I mean, I really try to find something that's not necessarily anything to do with the game that they play, unless there's something super interesting. I mean, basketball is basketball.
Yeah.
And there's interesting trends, or a guy might be really good at one thing, and the story is how did he get really good at this one thing, and maybe that's super compelling. But most of the time, the actual basketball is not going to be any more compelling than any other basketball story that's ever been told. And so I guess that's the general way I would say I approach it.
Yeah.
How has that changed, I guess, from previously? You mentioned being with the SEC and, having a bigger, I guess, pool of potential stories to kind of come up with as far as the players or different sports or just that many more teams to cover versus really focusing on Kentucky and sort of, just the amount of information that, could come about. Like, has that changed, or is it, more difficult to kind of come up with more interesting?
Well, I've always, even when I was at SEC country, I was focused on Kentucky. But I would say, one thing I would say is, I think that brings up an interesting idea of what I thought for my career, what the trajectory would be and what my goals would be. Like, for most of my life and career, I thought the goal would be to cover a team or a few teams really well, and then have somebody say, like, you're really good at this. You should be a national reporter, or you should cover the whole SEC or whatever, something bigger. And I think those jobs are shrinking, and there are fewer of them, and they're much harder to do, because I do think people want like really in-depth coverage of the team they care about. Like, are there a lot of casual fans that care broadly about all of college basketball or all of the NFL? Some do. And like I think it depends, right, on the situation. Like, everybody cares about the NFL draft and like everybody cares about certain national stories and things. But I have found over recent years that like there's more job stability and there's more I think a ability to really connect with an audience at the local level, like to cover a team, a program, and really know it better than anybody else knows it, and really tell its stories better than anybody else can tell them. Because if you're trying to do even the whole SEC, but especially if you were at a national level, what you said is there would be more story opportunities. Like, I think it would be fun. I would love to just have free reign to go tell all the great stories in college basketball. But the question is, like, as a national reporter, how much harder is that to do, to even identify them? Like, on the ground, like I know every player that comes through Kentucky, and over the course of a year, I learn pretty much all of them. It's very rare now on Kentucky. Somebody might beat me to writing a story, but it's not very often that somebody would write something or a TV broadcast would have a feature on a Kentucky player, and it would be like, wow, I had no idea that was a thing. I didn't know that about them, because I'm plugged in because I can focus on one team. Now, I will say, when Tom Hart on one of the broadcasts announced that Oscar Tshiebwe had a vision of like the team plane crashing before they went to the tournament and lost to St. Peter's and didn't want to get on the plane, beat me on that one. Had no idea. That had been kept pretty well under wraps. But for the most part, I think it's interesting. It's harder for me to see that myself, like, what I would have said, like, growing into or, rising to the level of a national reporter. I don't think that's necessarily like the judge of whether or not you've made it in your career anymore, or the best way to do it. Yeah. I mean, it is for some people. Some people are really good at that. There are a lot of people that are really good at it, but I think it's harder and harder to do. And I do think people are just way more hyper local in what they care about. With their teams.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Jake's from Indiana here. So I think he probably has a burning question. I know for the Indiana folks, they've been wondering when Kentucky and Indiana will renew the rivalry. Do you ever see that happening?
That's happening. They're going to do it. I don't know if they've said, I think it's I don't know if they've announced the first date. I can't recall now, but it won't be this year, and I'm not sure it's next year, but soon after that. I think they've agreed to do 6 games.
Okay.
So
yeah, are they
they'll
going to do
finally
it home away, or are they going to have a neutral?
I think it'll be a combination of home, away, and neutral. At least in Indianapolis. I don't know if they'll do an Indianapolis, Louisville. It may the neutrals may all be in all be in Indianapolis, but I know there'll be a combination of those things. It's similar to what they're doing with the Gonzaga series, where there's a mix of home, away, neutral.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You know, and this year was the one that people didn't want to say was a road game, even though they flew to 3,000 miles across the country and played in Spokane.
Yeah.
In an arena full of Gonzaga fans, 1 mile from their campus. But
yeah, that's a road game. I don't care what anyone says, because that place is hostile and couldn't keep up with that team that day.
No.
It was way too early in the season for Kentucky to get them, but we'll see. They get
it again next year in Rupp Arena.
Yep, you get Zag. Yeah. The Zags here, and I know there was rumblings of something with Duke happening too.
Oh, that's the other big one. Yeah, I mean the SEC Big 12 challenge is going away, and so we're going to have an SEC ACC challenge, and you got to think it's going to be Duke or Carolina just about every year, at least at the beginning. And Carolina's in the CBS Classic with them, so there'll be years where that's already a matchup. So there's going to be some years where, you're going to get Duke or Kentucky playing Duke and Carolina.
Yep.
And Indiana and Louisville.
And Michigan State.
All in the same year.
Because the Champions Classic.
And hopefully they'll also Kansas could be in the Champions Classic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's true. Actually, I guess most years, be a number of years, you'll get Duke and Carolina both.
Yeah.
Because Duke's in the Champions and Carolina's in the CBS. So
yeah,
a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, I think it's crazy. It's ever changing, the basketball landscape, with NIL, with the renewal of you have to go play 1 year of college sports, or you have to be 19 now. And you can't just go play overseas. You have to follow certain steps. So I think college basketball should be in for an interesting experience over the next several years during the CBA, with growth and, excitement. What happens with the tournament in a few years? I hope to hell there's not 96 or 128 teams.
There will be. I mean, it's going to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We say unfortunately, and we'll all complain about it. And then we will watch like crazy every one of those games. And that's why it's going to happen, because the ratings will be enormous. It just adds another. I mean, here's the thing I would say to people, including myself, when I have to remind myself not to be old man yelling at a cloud, is for so much of the country, college basketball only exists for the tournament. It's the only time they care or pay attention. And that sucks. They should pay attention all year. It's really fun, but there's just other things going on. And there's, I think college basketball made a mistake by not making it a 1 semester sport. I think they should play starting in January.
Yeah.
And that way people know when to start paying attention, and it's condensed, and you just, I think it would be better that way. But if you care about college basketball and you want the most people to care for the longest amount of time, then having a huge tournament is the only way I can see them doing it. So,
it's definitely interesting.
My version of expansion that would have been much more fun and actually been more beneficial to crowning the true champion is, once you get to a certain point in the tournament, going to 3-game best of 3 series, whether that's the Elite Eight or just the Final Four. But the best team in the country doesn't win,
right?
A lot of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way that if you had to play series, that the Calipari's first Kentucky team doesn't win a title.
Yeah.
Nobody was stopping that 2012 team regardless. They still would have won their title. And 2015, I mean, in a best of series with anybody in the country, I would have liked their chances to win.
Yeah. Even the Julius Randle team in the best of the Julius Randle team with best of 3, they just hit at the right stride. I think they would have beat Wichita State twice.
Maybe. I don't know. That team relied on 3 consecutive last minute
Oh yeah.
shots by Aaron Harrison, and they had to have Fred Van Vliet miss a last second shot
True.
in second round. So they went 4 straight rounds where it came down to like the end of the game.
True.
I don't think a team that escapes like that, and had played like crap all year, by the way.
True.
I'm not sure that team probably doesn't get to a championship game in that scenario, but
yeah. And UConn probably doesn't either.
You got a couple other Calipari titles in there, I think, in a best of.
Yeah.
And you draw it out that way too. Like you play the normal tournament, normal number of teams, but then you get to the end, and it, like the NBA playoffs, all of a sudden, like the last couple rounds take, they take a little while, and you don't think people would go crazy insane for like the college version of Game 7, Game 3 to get to the to win the title.
Oh yeah,
I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Vegas would make a lot of money too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we've hit a lot on the sports side of things, but you have a busy home life with twins that are young and full of energy. Just check out Kyle's Twitter page. You can catch them there. So what's that like having kids off to school and just balancing late nights, because the 9:45 tips at Rupp Arena are probably a ton of fun for you all and your family, and how you balance all that, writing stories, deadlines, yada yada. So like, what's that like to balance in season more likely than not, with that crazy time traveling, all that stuff that you got going on?
Yeah, perfectly illustrating your point this is your third time trying to get me to actually get me to show up and record on time, because something is always happening, some minor to semi-major emergency in my family. And then today we were a few minutes late because the Hunter Dickinson sweepstakes was in progress. But no, it's crazy. Twin 6-year-olds. My wife has had a bunch of health problems, doing pretty well now, but the reason we moved to Nashville during the pandemic was heavily because of that. And yeah, now they're in kindergarten and they're in activities and they're going everywhere. And really the bigger impact on me is just now they're people, like they're real little human beings who say profound things, and things that'll like make you really happy and proud, and then things that'll like break your heart. Like why do you keep leaving on the weekend, when I have to go cover a game? Obviously living in Nashville, the games are in Lexington, or if I go to road games, just about every game I cover is essentially a road game, except the one game a year they play at Vanderbilt and the SEC tournament. Those were helpful. And so when they start to ask you, like, when will you be home, and do you really have to go, and those kind of things, it sort of does a number on you emotionally. And you start to, I'm in this weird sort of heavily emo moment in my life where, my parents are getting not old. My parents had me young, so they're not really that old, but they're getting older. Their parents, I was fortunate to have 3 of my 4 grandparents are still alive.
Wow. But
they're getting a lot older, 94, 90, and 89, I think. And starting to have health, things that they're going through. And then my kids are growing up on the other end of the spectrum, and you just start to like, all these things start to hit you, like what is important. How much am I willing to sacrifice of my real life for my work life? You think there's a period in your life where you think like the only thing that matters is like, not the only thing that matters, but the thing that like sort of drives you every day is like succeeding, whatever your definition of success is. And that's always, for most of us, our jobs. And I don't know, I've like hit this I've hit this wall of wanting. I still love my job and I love telling stories and I want to be the best at, doing it, and so I still put everything I have into those things, but I find myself like weighing the cost of everything. Like I've had some opportunities to take other jobs that were, maybe they were higher profile or they were way more lucrative or whatever, or they were maybe a chance to step into something bigger down the road. And it was a question of like, what is that worth to me? And it would, those jobs were all going to be busier. it's not like I don't have to work now, but it's just, I can more or less choose which things I'm going to go to. I have flexibility so that I can be the one to pick them up from school if I need to be, or take them every day if there's a stretch where I need to take them and pick them up every day, or take them to their activity, or just like hang out with them when they get home and like find out what's going on in their life. Where you can't do that if you have certain kinds of jobs. There's a lot of jobs especially in the media industry, where it's like, if you wanted it to be that, you could work around the clock. Like I have never ever wanted to be one of the like nonstop 24/7 news breakers, like at a national level.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know how those people like survive. It's just like, I don't want to have my phone out all the time. I don't want to be on the clock all the time. I used to be like, there was a time early in my career where it was like just I was always paying attention to what was going on. Just checking what might be happening. And I don't fault anybody that's in that phase of their life or their career, or is just way better at like multitasking than I am and balances it. Some people are really good at that and having good, being on when they have to be on, and really being like turning it off and then being present when they can be. And I say more power to all those people. All those kind of jobs are important and valuable, and it takes like somebody that's got a certain set of skills, as Liam Neeson would say, to do some of those jobs. But yeah, I've hit this like fairly recently, as my kids have really become like conversational, and so they start to talk to me and like can really clearly express emotion, that I just like want to hang out with them all the time. And if I could quit my job and like move out to a farm and hang out with my kids, that's probably what I would do right now. I can't, so I'm not, but
yeah,
it's weird how it hits you, man. It like, you're going along, and then like whatever that like next phase of life is, just like runs you over without you really seeing it coming.
Shoo.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Kyle, but I've got a 6-year-old son too, and I've got a younger daughter. But I feel like over this year, and maybe it's kindergarten or just this phase of life, but like, previously activities, sports, all this stuff, it was kind of in his own world. And when I would sit down to watch a ball game or explain to him something, it was kind of like, I don't know, I don't really get it. But here recently, it's like, I want to sit and I want to watch the playoff games with you. I want to, go toss baseball. I want to do this, which is like all these things that I feel like you dream of as a dad, of like, having your buddy there to hang with you and to have those conversations, have those, that bonding moment. And, I think that here recently, because of that, all of a sudden, same thing. It's like, I used to want to go, to an office and sort of separate myself from everybody and like really kind of, hone in on what I got to get done and try to get everything done as quickly as possible and then come home. And now it's like I work from home, 90% of the time. And it's like he's at school, but as soon as he gets home, it's like, all right, well, let's go do something, or let's, get out and try to spend that time, because, if not, you're not going to get it. And then you feel like you all of a sudden you miss that window, because before too long, they're already, to this next phase where it's like, well, I don't really want to hang out that much, or I want to hang out with my friends more, or, and then all of a sudden you're like, where do they go? And I think that's what like my wife and I talk about a lot, is just like, wow, you blink. And everybody always says, wow, it's like, it goes so quickly, cherish these moments, and you're kind of like, yeah, whatever. But then it's like, it actually does. And I think that's where it's like trying to take advantage of the opportunities now to like, set that foundation or set that routine, I guess, of like, what you want to do with your kids. And hopefully, it sticks and you're able to kind of continue with it as they get older.
Yeah, the idea of like the ticking clock is, really starts to get you as you get older, and as your kids get older, because it's like my mom said to me at Easter, I think this year, she's like, "What are you doing this summer with the kids?" I was like, "Well, we haven't planned it out yet." She's like, "Well, you need to, because you only have 12 summers, left with your kids."
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh. Okay, like, woof, that'll get you. You think about it in that way. It's like it's really not that many. Like they go fast. Mine are in their last 3 weeks of kindergarten.
Phew.
My kindergarten was like it was a blink. I mean,
Right.
and they're done with their first grade of school. So yeah, I mean, I just think that and then just circling back to like the sports world, when I think about coaches, and you hear coaches who like retire and say, or step away or whatever, and say they want to like spend time with their family, people sort of mock that or roll their eyes at it or assume it's like BS. But I can only imagine, like, if you're a high level coach, you spend like no time with your family. It's just not possible. I mean, I know the hours they keep, and they have to go to their office. And I cannot imagine like coaching during that window where your kids are growing up and then they're like adults, or they're in high school, and you're like, oh, was this worth it?
Mm-hmm.
And for some people it is. Some people do make that time in the off season. Like, okay, I'm taking this month, and no matter, come hell or high water, we're going to the beach, and you can make some of those memories. But I would still imagine, like, even in the best case scenario in a coaching world, or, some of these like high level business people, even in the perfect scenario, you absolutely missed out on some stuff. Like if you didn't go to all your kids' games or couldn't take them to their practice, then you missed out on some stuff. Just bottom line. And that's kind of where I am right now, is like figuring out how much stuff am I willing to miss, and it's not very much.
Yeah. Well, and I think about that. You talked about coaches. I don't know if a lot of people know this, and you two, I don't think know this at all. But so once we got done once we got done with the Tennessee game, I had the choice to play another year, 5th year eligibility, or I could go into coaching. I talked about it with Coach Phillips at the time, and Rick Minner was our defensive coordinator, and I got the go ahead. Kyle, you remember Rick Minter? He was
nuclear Minter,
little crazy. So I start working for Coach Rock which is the weight and strength conditioning coach for until spring ball, and working with Coach Turner, who was the defensive line coach at the time. And officially, Joker says, "Hey, you're in grad school, and you're ready to coach." So season ends, spring practice ends. Minner comes up to me. So like, I'm still trying to finish and graduate, capstone courses, all this stuff. He's like, 6 a.m. He's like, we're breaking down film from, I think it was Ball State was the first game of the next year. And I was like, 6 a.m. Like, we have all day to do this. Like, What are we doing? He's like, we have 6 a.m. and then you have recruiting visit, and then you recruiting meetings, and you have this, and you have this, and you have this, and you have this. And like, literally the day was full from 6 to 8 p.m. in the off season. And so it's like, people don't realize like what happened. So after I go through that, I'm like, man, I kind of want a life. Like, I would love to coach. I would be bald now if I was coaching, because it's a grind. And most of the people that go through, the graduate assistant ranks, unless you're super special, like, you don't get up quick. Unless, there's a coach that leaves, and then you kind of take a trajectory. Most of the time you're going to BFE and taking a job at some directional state school in Division III level, making no money, and then working your way up. And so, it's a very challenging, game, and kudos to them, because my son's going to be 4. We have a daughter on the way. And like, I'm so glad that the pandemic happened, because I don't have to travel that much anymore. Like, I get to spend time. I get to wrestle with my son at the end of the day. Like, those are the things that matter to me. And luckily, I, like you, have a flexible job. Jake's got a flexible job, where we have demands that we have to meet, obviously, but we have that flexibility to hang out with our kids. And second to none. Once you have them, it's kind of like, you don't want to get rid of, like, you don't want to leave them.
No, I agree.
I think it's changed a little bit too, and just know with sports in particular, in parents being able to go watch their kids play in their games and everything. I think before there was this culture of like, whether it's the husband or whatever it be, it's like, I'm gone and I'm just going to miss the game. And I feel like anymore, we'll have people that will, you'll be emailing, trying to figure out a time for a meeting or a Zoom or a call or whatever. And it's like, I get a lot of responses like, I don't do anything after, 4:30 or something, because my kids have baseball or volleyball or this or that. And it's like this accepted, deal now, where it's like, hey, we all have life beyond work, and, I'm going to go home, I'm going to see my kids. And whereas before it was just like, well, if it's 5 o'clock, you should still be able to be doing work. You're not just clocking out. And it's like, I like that idea that I feel like people are now understanding it more that, you don't get that time. So, let's be okay with pushing it another day or so.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, I think too, like, I think employers are figuring out if you hire good people, they can be plenty motivated, but in trying to get things done, and whether it be a flexible schedule or shorter days or whatever. Like, the 8-hour workday is arbitrary. Some days you need to work 9 or 10. Some days you need to work 4.
Right.
And if you're good at hiring people that are motivated and good and talented and creative or whatever you need them to be, they'll get their work done. And I think a lot more people now are motivated by, like, I want to get what I need to get done so that I can, spend that time.
Right.
And I think our value companies that value families, and, The Athletic is one for sure that does, and that makes a huge difference. I mean, they let me move to Nashville when my job is in primarily in Lexington.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big statement of, like, we care about you, being able to take care of your family. So,
Yeah. No.
Yeah, the world has changed. I mean, like, that's the crazy thing. There's so many things that you could say, like, if I lived 10 years, if I came into this job 10 years ago, or I lived 25 years ago, as a, young professional, or that would be so different. Like, even like things that, like, I had appendicitis as a senior in high school. And I think about, like, medicine, like, if I had been a person with appendicitis like 50 years earlier, I would just be dead.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't have lived past 18, right? Those people just died. And, like, if I came into this workforce and had my family 30 years ago, I mean, 20 years ago, it's kind of crazy to think about, but even 30 years ago, if I'd come into this window of my career, I'm 41 years old, I've established myself, and now I have young kids. Like, 30 years ago, expectations would be a lot different. Like, societal expectations of what my role should be in my kids' lives, or like job expectations, where you said, like, employers would just be like, well, the husband misses the T-ball game.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is a crazy thought, but we in many ways we haven't improved enough, but in a lot of ways there's a lot of people that think a lot differently now. I'm glad that way more people realize that, like working yourself to death is, like, not the way to go through life.
Yeah. There's this article, I think in the Times, or one of the big, but it was like the anti-hustle movement, right? The idea of just grinding and to grind is kind of going away. Like, the idea is, like you just kind of unpacked, it's to work to the completion, whether it's 12 hours one day and 1 hour the next, or if it's, hey, you got a series of 3 weeks where you just got to lay the smack down on your job. And then, like, afterwards you're like, hey, I'm off for 2 to 3 weeks, just like getting my life back in order. So I think it's definitely, people say work-life balance. It's work and life. Like, your whole life is trying to find balance. Like, if you kind of say work-life balance, like, no, like, we are more humans than the 8 hours that we get paid a day to do. Right. And so, like, I always just try to figure out, how do we have life balance? Like, are we waking up morning and spending, like, and having breakfast with our children? Are we having dinner at night? Like, those are the things that, like, bring a ton of value. Because, like your mom said, that made me sad just when you said that.
Oh, dude,
12 summers.
I was, like, trying not to cry on your podcast as I was saying.
Oh, man.
It is. It's crazy when you think about it.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, so that means I have 14. And so I'm, like, thinking about that. I'm like, it's those moments, right? Those are the moments you steal: breakfast, dinner, vacation. Like, those are the things that are impactful. And I think that's what this podcast is about, is hearing that life advice from your mom, but also realizing, hey, that kind of sucks too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, like, I mean, the car ride to and from school, like, there are so many times that I'm, like, listening, or at least early in their lives, or I'm, like, listening. That's my time to, like, listen to satellite radio, the music I want to hear, or the show I want to hear, or I'm on the phone making a call because I'm sitting in the car rider line, and it's hell on earth. and I'm, like, getting some work calls done, and then they get in the car, and I just continue to do that. Now that, like I said, now that they've become really conversational, and we can actually have that exchange. Like I've tried to really stop doing anything else, turn the radio off. And because if you don't talk to them, they'll be content not to talk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like make them talk to me and tell me what's going on. And, you can head off a lot of problems that way, and you can like find out interesting things that way. And, been asking my son, like, what does he want to do with his, money he's gotten from the tooth fairy, or a couple, dollars he's gotten for his birthdays here and there. And he's been saving them up in this thing. He's got like, I don't know, he's got like $22, I think. And he said he's not spending it on anything. He's saving it all up to buy the family an RV so we can go on an RV trip. Which we're going to have to talk about what the value of things. But, just asking him what he wanted to do with his money helped me to understand like what he wanted to do this summer. So, we're going to probably rent a big RV and go explore somewhere together, and make some memories and make time to do that. So it's and the countdown, it is really depressing. But somebody I posted this reposted this image that was like an illustration the other day. It was like kind of the cycle of life, like your dad holding you as a baby and holding your hand and holding you on his shoulders, and then like progressing through as he gets older and you're pushing him you're pushing your dad in the wheelchair, and then the last cartoon is the very depressing, kneeling over dad's grave. And just said that, like, that's what I told you, that's like a thing that whole concept of like being raised by your parents and then essentially parenting them at the end of their life, taking care of them. And the specialness of that bond has been like on my mind a lot. And somebody replied to me, you should get one of these. And it was a link, and it was like a life calendar. And it's like this huge grid of like your life, the average life expectancy, and then like this grid of like, this is how many weeks and, how many like quadrants and whatever you have left. Like, be intentional about filling those in with what's important to you to get into those boxes before you, before you get into a box. So, it is depressing, but I think it's important. Like, if you don't actively choose how you're going to spend your life, you'll just wake up one day and realize that you like did not spend it doing anything,
right?
Or anything that mattered to you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the car. So this is something I find very interesting. Mike Greenberg said it, posted the question on Twitter or something forever ago. Are you one of those people that will listen to your children's music, or do they have to listen to your music if you have it on?
No, they listen. I'm really introducing them to like, rock and roll, and they'll tell me they want to hear My Morning Jacket, which makes me happy. And
My Morning Jacket, lead singer from Kentucky.
What's that?
My Morning Jacket. There's actually Kentucky connection there.
Yeah, they're Louisville.
Yeah.
So I've seen them a bunch, and they hear it a bunch, and trying to play like classic music too, and classical music and all the different stuff. Expose them to a lot of things. That's another like really cool, fun thing about as your kids get older, is like trying to figure out what they like and trying to figure out what they're good at naturally, and the crossover between things they're good at and they like doing. And then just like feeding into that, like, okay, you're good at this, let me encourage you. Because a lot of people ask me, like, how did you become a sports writer? And like, really everything about, I think it's true for a lot of people. Like, I got encouraged by a teacher in like 5th grade. Who said, like, you're really good at writing. You're really good at this. In 5th grade, I remember it. Like, I still remember it. And then 7th grade, I had another English teacher who was like, you're really good at this. You should do this little thing. We like had a partnership with the local newspaper where it was like one page of the paper was like a kid's paper. And we got to like write the articles. And then I got to high school and I had an English teacher who said, like, you're really good at this. You should be on the student paper. And my grandmother, who I spent a lot of time with growing up, was an English teacher. And she always made me do writing exercises. She really encouraged me to do that. And so like all these steps along the way, people encourage me. And I think about that all the time now with my kids. Like, it was something that I was naturally good at. And then I got some encouragement from it. And then I got some like guidance in it. And, I got to get some hands-on experience in it. And then that became my thing. And so that's an interesting thing about kids too, is like figuring out what they're into. And just trying to like, in a healthy, non like pushy, helicopter parent way, like help them figure out if they want to do more of it. Like some of it is like you think they're good at it and you put them in the thing and then they don't like it and don't make them do it not necessarily. But,
the reason I ask is because I just had to go to Blippy Live last week and didn't know if you got to experience Blippy or any of that fun stuff.
No, our kids didn't really get into Blippy for whatever reason.
Lucky.
They were. My son now wants to just watch other people play Minecraft on YouTube, which is like we have to really limit that. But I'm like stunned and amazed by. We have like a generation of kids that like really like to watch other people do things on YouTube.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My son is the same way. And it's Minecraft. I don't know what it is about Minecraft, but yeah, my son Evan's the same thing. What do you want for there's like birthday theme. What do you want it to be? I want it to be Minecraft.
Yep.
Like, what do you even know about Minecraft? Like, what do you do?
I know. He doesn't know how to play it. He just like watches other people play.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
What are they doing there? I don't know. It's cool to watch though. I'm like, all right, that's great.
My son watched YouTube Kids this morning and it was like Sonic in Minecraft, like rolling around, like destroying stuff. And I'm like, what is going on? And like, then I'm like, and then I just
register with me.
No, I just took my phone and was like, we need to go have breakfast.
Yeah.
That's enough of that.
You were talking about music. I had a good one the other day. My son came up and said, Dad, I heard this great song the other day. I'm like, what is it? He said, it's called Californication by the Hot Red Chili Peppers.
Hot Red Chili Peppers.
Yeah, you mean the Red Hot Chili Peppers? Yeah,
awesome.
You need to play that. I was like, I don't know where you heard that at, but I love it. Yeah,
good song.
I love that. I love that you love it. But if you ask any questions about the song, we're just gonna shove those to the side until you're a teenager.
Yeah. Talk about that later. What is fornication?
Let's any euphemisms or metaphors, we'll explain at a later date.
Right, exactly.
Awesome. Well, no, this has been great. Like I love to unpack this stuff. And Kyle, truly appreciate your time today. Just chatting with us. This is what, the moments are in between. So we do ask our guest this one question to kind of close this up every time. And it's this: what's your like moniker? Or what piece of advice would you give to people about, finding those moments in between, like finding your off hours?
I think I said it, just a minute ago. I think you have to do it on purpose. Like, I don't think you can accidentally make time. I mean, I guess you can, but there are so especially now, there's just so many other things you could do or things that could pop up and distract you or, shows you could watch or things you could, mindlessly scroll on your phone. Their life is busy and hard and like kids are loud. And so it's like easy to have this mindset of like, I want them to like go somewhere and be quieter. And there's a time and place for that too. But, I think you have to like actively choose it. And like, there's so many days that you've had a crappy day at work or you're tired and you just want to like lay on the couch. And I think the best thing you can do is when you feel like that is to like fight it and go like hang out with your kids, even when you don't want to. Like, cause I think people should be honest that there are many times that we don't actually want to in the moment hang out with our kids. As much as I love them and like all the sentimental stuff I've said, like there's a million times where I'm like, I just want them to be quiet and I want to lay here in silence.
Yes.
But I always feel way better if I go hang out with them instead. So I think you just have to do it on purpose.
Yeah. No, I think that's so good. And I think, having a purpose-driven life is key, right? If you wander around aimlessly, you're never going to find a direction which way you want to go. So truly appreciate that wisdom. Because we all need a little more wisdom in our life every day. So appreciate your time today. If you want to know more about Kyle, just go over to Twitter. That's where he's really active there, at Kyle Tucker. Or it's actually Tucker Athletic. What's your Twitter handle?
At Kyle Tucker _ATH.
Yeah, there we go. So go follow Kyle there. And subscribe to The Athletic. The last promo I got was like $1 a month. And that's when I signed up. So go take advantage of that. It's a great way to get news. Kyle writes really great articles. So take advantage of that while the sales are still going on. As always, if you want to find out more about off hours, go over to @DrinkOffHours on your favorite social platform. If you want to know more about Bourbon Lens, go over to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook @Bourbon Lens. And we'll catch you next time. Cheers.